Have you ever wanted to take your favorite novel and apply it to wargaming? Use it to inspire a narrative campaign? Well, that's what I've done for today's episode. I took one of my favorite books, Expeditionary Force. Well, favorite series is Expeditionary Force. Columbus Day is the first book. I didn't actually use this book in particular. I did use books later in the series to actually inspire a narrative campaign based on the series and these characters. I've always loved kind of combining a couple of my loves. So in this case, it's Warhammer 40k and Expeditionary Force. So with those two loves combined, I had to create a narrative campaign that would flow seamlessly in Warhammer 40k and be playable while still actually functioning as a narrative campaign based on the books. And I think I've managed to come up with one. It was a lot of fun and a lot of work to make it happen. But we're going to actually dive into this. It may be a little bit longer episode and talk about how exactly I came up with the narrative campaign, what the narrative campaign looks like. I'll even include the lists for both armies down in the description so that you can join along and play the game itself. We did manage to play through a couple different versions of this game in Tabletop Simulator. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to screen grab anything there. My computer just can't handle both at the same time. But it was a lot of fun, and we were able to achieve that narrative campaign. We did have to use Tabletop Simulator because one of the two armies I don't actually own. So let's dive into it and begin with talking about the key elements of Expeditionary Force that inspired the game. So with Expeditionary Force, there is one major army that is the main character of the series, and that is the humans, which is convenient with 40k because we have a lot of humans. And it's a very mixed force. The main characters of Merry Band of Pirates, they tend to be a shadow force or special forces. So in order to represent them correctly, I went with Agents of the Imperium, led by Eisenhorn. I don't know if you guys can actually see him very well there. Unfortunately, he's not painted yet in my collection. But he was a lot of fun to get out on the tabletop in simulation and field him with a very unique army that requires a lot of different units. The reason we went with the Agents of the Imperium is because I could have Naval Breachers and Space Marines in the same army, along with an Inquisitor and a Navigator, who I used to represent Skippy, the artificial intelligence, and got a very unique build set that I actually think might work down the road. I'd love to see somebody actually build it out and try it. It worked well in Tabletop Simulator in this exact scenario, but I don't know if that would translate well to actual competitive play. I'm not super familiar with Agents of the Imperium, besides using them as one-offs and two-offs as allies in my army. Now, the humans and the Merry Band of Pirates are facing off against one of the biggest bads in the entire series, and that is Maxolhx. The Maxolhx were a very easy unit to cast. I brought in the Drukhari, led by my Archon, who leads a very mixed unit. We went Incubi and Cabalite heavy, just to make sure we got that Drukhari feel. But we did bring in some witches, we did bring in several ships, of different sorts to really get a good balance that would feel like the Maxolhx would. They're a very heavy strike force that is kind of a glass cannon, even in the books. They rely heavily on their firearms and their combat skills, but aren't actually the strongest units in a fight. So they were pretty easy one-to-one representation for the Drukhari. Now, there's a lot of other elements of this that we needed to match a little bit to make sure that we really actually had everything balanced. So in this game, the humans are the attackers. In most of the series, only in shipboard combat do the humans really play defense. Most of the time they're on some kind of sneaky mission to go steal something or blow something up or assassinate someone. So in order to represent that, the humans have to be the attackers. It led to a bunch of different scenarios that I played out to try and figure out how to make this work. But it really did actually lead to a pretty balanced game because the Drukhari aren't great on defense. And it's actually true in the series as well about the Maxolhx. The Maxolhx are used to being the bullies in the galaxy. They're used to being able to push most of their other races around and get their way and do pretty terrible things because of a mutual destruction pact that they kind of have with the Rindaloo, the other race, which is kind of a mix. Think Necrons, but with a little bit more Eldar passivity. They're not really too keen on doing anything or just to try and protect their race. But they didn't play a factor in this one, which they don't heavily in a lot of the series until the most recent book. But like we discussed last week, which video will pop up right here, Expeditionary Force is a really good read for anyone who's into wargaming and really enjoys it. And it has a lot of these elements, like I'm showing a little bit here, that are pretty much a one-to-one comparison. With the base factions in place, we now talk a little bit about the actual gameplay, mission rules, deployment, and stuff like that, so you can set the stage for your next epic game. Like we just discussed with the basic setup and how it's applicable to Warhammer 40k, let's talk about the actual base structure for the mission. So, first, I wanted Search and Destroy as my deployment. It gives my factions a little bit more separation and a little bit more cover, because in the narrative, a lot of times, the Merry Band of Pirates is sneaking around with the intent to steal or destroy something. Now, in order to make this game a little bit more narratively sound, I actually chose 2 separate mission rules, one for each faction. This gives a little bit more unique nature to how this game would actually work. So, first off, I gave the humans Vox Static. Most of the time when the humans are in a fight, they are pretty much on their own. They're by themselves. They don't really have anything good going for them, and it's entirely up to their own wits to survive. By giving them Vox Static, it gives that little bit more feel of desperation, because you can't really do any command rerolls or anything like that, and it just ties your hands a little bit. It makes it a little bit harder to do any of the magic you have. Now, in the narratives, a lot of times the Maxolhx or anyone defending against the humans doesn't really have good information on what's going on. They just know things start blowing up. So best way to imitate this, in my opinion, would be Scrambler Fields. This gives a very unique ability that kind of ties the Maxolhx hands, because they can't really achieve anything initially, and they're kind of stuck in a malaise trying to figure out exactly how they're going to survive. And this, combined with the Vox Static for the humans, leads to a very strategic move, especially in the first couple of rounds. This combination makes both armies not play the way they want to play, and gives a very unique feel of a Special Forces mission that sets the stage for what's going to come. Now, it's going to be a lot of board control games, especially for the humans, because they need to achieve their objectives. The Maxolhx, they're defending and they need to try and keep them away. So the best one to do this with, deploy Servo Skulls. Deploy Servo Skulls gives me moving objectives. This creates a much more robust feel to the game and allows for a lot more complication and nuance, so you can't just have somebody go camp an objective. By moving the objectives back and forth and scoring more points, it gives both sides a little bit more ample maneuverability. Now, to be clear, I am using the Leviathan deck for this. I haven't been able to get my hands on a Pariah Nexus deck yet, so I didn't have access to those while building this out. And that means you may have some different combinations you want to use if you do have Pariah Nexus, which I do encourage trying out as well. And if you do find that combination, please let me know. With those unique game mechanics already in place, we can talk a little bit about a couple more little bits and pieces of features. Now, there is one big factor that always plays into these games, and that is the Skippy factor. The Skippy factor is when everything goes wrong, Skippy has some unique ability that allows Skippy has some unique ability that allows him to do things that aren't natural by the laws of physics, or bend the laws of physics, or in combination with Joe, do things that they shouldn't be able to do naturally. So the Skippy factor does need to be taken into account with this game. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. The way we ended up doing it is the Skippy factor is kind of a gambit card, kind of. It doesn't score you points, but it allows for escapes. If one of your units is stuck and Skippy is within a certain aura range, we went with 6 inches, that unit was able to be withdrawn from the board and brought back into reserve. Now, moving units and allowing communications and things like that using micro wormholes or warping spacetime is a pretty common tactic for Skippy. But if you combine Joe Bishop and Skippy together, that's where the real shenanigans come in. So with those, we set up a list of 6 unique things that could happen based off of a dice roll when those two are combined. And those 6 things are pretty important. So first off, I'm going to try and list them off, see if I can't get them to run right here during editing. First, if you roll a 1, Skippy not only fails, he's attacked by a virus. This means you lose the Skippy factor for the rest of the game, and that Psyker unit is now just dead weight. He can't be removed from the field, but he can't do anything either. Skippy can be represented on the board a lot of different ways. If I'm actually playing him on the tabletop, I'm probably going to go grab my little teleporter module that comes with your Terminators. That's probably the closest you're going to get to an actual representation. But I would use either the Navigator or a Primaris Psyker datasheet in order to represent him, because those are kind of the closest you're going to get. But with that said, you roll a 1 when you go for the Skippy Joe combo. Skippy kind of dies. He's not dead, but he's also not helpful. A 2, Skippy loses the Skippiness because of a failure and lack of confidence. Now, you can command reroll your way out of that, but that is the only way you can win. So it's basically a battle shock. 3, nothing happens. 4, you get the Skippy. So when you get the Skippy, he is then able to transport units just like his normal abilities. On a 5, you get the Skippy ability, and or you can get a bonus, a feel no pain roll. And on a 6, you get an auto win on any roll during that turn. Now, that makes Skippy extremely powerful, but here's the catch. Skippy can be captured. So, Skippy is both an objective and a character. It makes him a little bit more valuable, and you want to protect him, but you also want him up near the front so he can do his magic. And this leads to a very unique gameplay style. And it was a lot of fun to actually get to see kind of work. That the Skippy factor didn't really work great through a tabletop simulator. It's one that I think would work a lot better just on a tabletop with friends. So let me know what you guys think. If you can think of a better option for the Skippy factor, let me know in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed the video so far, make sure you like and subscribe. We're growing a lot as a channel, and I want to keep doing videos like this. And the best way to tell me whether you actually enjoy these videos is by liking and subscribing. That tells me which videos you guys really want to see and which ones you want to see less of. So we're going to tackle this, and it's going to be a lot of fun for me, but I want to know if you guys enjoy it as well. Now, the last part of the setup for this game that's going to be very important is your terrain setup. There's a lot of different times that the Maxolhx and the humans square off either directly or indirectly. Almost every time it's in a heavy urban environment. whether it be a fortress or something akin to a fortress. Now, the easiest way to do this is using a GW terrain. In our case, we used the bunker, the landing pad, and the Vox array and Auspex array that you can get pretty standard. We also used some walls and stuff like that to give an urban feel, along with some clutter for crates and barrels and things like that, and torn down statues. That gave an urban combat feel that allowed lighter units to move and have a lot of cover, while units like the Raiders and other ships like that to move in a more restricted fashion that you see in a lot of these books. So with that terrain in place, we then go and look at the actual setup and make sure everything adds up correctly. Now, the one big thing that the humans are going to have that we haven't talked about yet is they're going to go first because they're the ones with initiative. On top of that, they're also going to have cloaking for espionage. And the easiest way to represent this is just to give everybody a scout move. So they get a free move before their move. This allows everything to get into place to spring their ambush and spring their attack on the unsuspecting Maxolhx. Now that we've talked about the baseline, let's talk about the actual game. We actually had a lot of fun doing it. There was a lot of cool things that we were able to try and do. Not a lot of it worked out. There was a lot of combination issues. It was really hard to figure out how to combine Navy Breachers and Death Watch, along with some Inquisitors, some Psychers. We also included 2 Armigers to give them a little bit, or to give the agents of the Imperium a little bit of anti-tank. But it was a lot of fun because you got to get your units in and get them dispersed into tactical positions. And then everything kind of catches fire. The Drukhari are very fast. They are very agile. They are very shooty. So you lose a lot of Navy Breachers. And I lost a lot of the Death Watch kill teams as well. And it did end up being a bloodbath. I managed to pull off the win barely, but it was hard. It was one of the hardest games I've ever really played, going back and forth. The Drukhari played extremely well and played their role extremely well as well. So I would love to see you guys tackle this and let me know what you guys think. If there's any alterations to the list as well, let me know what you guys think should be changed in order to better represent the armies. And finally, make sure you guys join us next week when we talk about one of the biggest series of all time in fantasy, the Stormlight Archives. We're going to do this same treatment over the next 2 weeks. First, we're going to talk about Stormlight Archive versus Warhammer and talk about why people who are fans of Stormlight Archives should be playing Warhammer and why Warhammer fans should try Stormlight Archives. It's going to be a lot of fun to do. And on top of that, these next 2 videos are going to be coming out almost right on top of Stormlight 5 coming out. So it should be a really fun combination to make sure that we actually get to enjoy a lot of the hobbies that sometimes we don't cross paths with, but a lot of people who enjoy one will enjoy the other. For example, I know Henry Cavill's a big fan of both of them and has regularly talked about both of them, both Warhammer and Stormlight Archives. I'm also a huge fan of both. I'm not comparable to Henry Cavill. He's kind of the king of the nerds currently. I am just a humble author and a big wargaming nerd as well. So join us next week for all of that. Like I said, comment below if you have any book series you'd like me to tackle like this, or any characters you'd like to see compared in a wargaming fashion, or if you just want to see me create more lore accurate lists like we've done in the past that have been pretty popular as well. On top of that, make sure you like and subscribe and ring that little bell so that you get notified anytime that we have any new videos coming out. I'm hoping to get a good backlog so that I don't have to miss any weeks throughout the holiday season, and you guys will have stuff to watch when you're hiding from your family in the bathroom because your crazy uncle has kind of lost it. So thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time.